You may recall that I've been very interested in the OJ Simpson case in that recent 10-part series on an American crime story, The People versus OJ Simpson, has increased my curiosity and my reflection on the case. Now, in a recent blog, I spoke about the differences of that case, it being a preeminent criminal case, perhaps the biggest criminal case of the 20th century, and I compared it in a few measures, in a few ways, with civil cases. And just to recap, the presumption is different. The preponderance of evidence in a civil case is different from the reasonable doubt standard in a criminal case. And in Massachusetts, a civil case requires 10 out of 12 jurors, but to convict, you need unanimity, i.e. 12 out of 12. But one thing that I think is very, very interesting is the jury deliberated on that case for one day, and then it was announced that there would be a verdict the next morning. The verdict wasn't released that night, so people had a chance to speculate. What would this jury do? Or what was the jury's decision, given that they had only deliberated after a 10-month trial all of several hours? And I felt I knew that first night where it was announced that there was a verdict, I felt I had a pretty good sense of what that verdict would be. And in fact, I must say I was correct, that it would be a decision of acquittal, not guilty. And that decision, you may recall, shocked people. But let me tell you why I felt that there would be an acquittal. The first is psychologically. For a jury to acquit a major celebrity and one who had such a favorable persona would have taken a much longer time than a matter of just a couple of hours. The jury would really have to sit and think about what was going on and really come to terms with what they would do, and that is, on a double homicide, come out with a criminal verdict, or a verdict of guilty. People thought that night, that is before the verdict was announced, that why did the jury ask to hear only one piece of evidence in their deliberations? And that was the evidence of the limo driver. His name was Alan Park, and those of you who followed the case would recall that his testimony was significant for two reasons. That when he pulled up in his limousine that evening to take OJ Simpson to the airport, he did not see a Bronco parked on the street. But as he left the property that night, the Bronco was there. And of course, the inference or implication is that Simpson had come in following the murders. And the other thing that Park testified to is that he saw a figure roughly the same size as Simpson walk across the lawn of the property. Well, those two things would be rather incriminating. So why would a jury that the next day had a verdict announced of acquittal, why would they want to hear such damning testimony? And I said to myself, it has to do with their desire to hear what they felt was the best evidence of the prosecution, and that they could therefore debunk it. And if they weren't convinced by that transcript, the transcript of that testimony, they felt on solid grounds in issuing the acquittal. That brings to mind and allows us to know that testimony was of far more significance to them, in that they had to grapple with it, than blood evidence, DNA evidence. Because blood evidence and DNA evidence, and this has applicability to the things that we do in civil cases, is really very technical, very dry, and uninspiring. But eyewitness testimony is something that resonates, whether it works for the side who's presenting it or it doesn't. It still is a factor that gets more weight, in my opinion, than certain physical evidence. Thank you.